I am pleased to be joined by the NASCAR Man of the Hour, Tyler Reddick. For those of you that don't know, Tyler has won the first 3 races in this NASCAR season, a feat that has never been done in the 78-year history of NASCAR. So my first question to you, Tyler, is how are you doing this? I mean, is there something that you have picked up in previous years that has led you to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly there is something to it. You know, my experiences in the past, at all 3 of these racetracks, Circuit of the Americas, I've won there before. I've been very competitive there. The last time we were at Echo Park Speedway, the second race that I won, the summer date, I pretty much gave the race away with the move that I made at the end of that one. So it didn't really play out that exact same way, but I was motivated to succeed based off of previous failures. And yeah, funny enough, the previous year in the Daytona 500, I ran second to William Byron and, came up 1 spot short. So I think in some ways, yes, the things that we experienced last year at these racetracks, I think certainly played a role in it.
All right, now here comes the Michael Jordan section of this interview. I know everybody wants to ask you a Michael Jordan question. You've probably heard several of them. Give me your best Michael Jordan story.
One I always like, referring back to, it was a couple years ago. We were starting the year off, and he asked us how we were going to do it in the 500 or how we thought we were going to be. And he asked Bubba first, and they went back and forth about it. Bubba's obviously been very good on the super speedways for a while, and I just remember he asked me how I thought it was going to go, and was like, I mean, I think we know how it's going to go. You kind of suck on the super speedways. He kind of put it like that. And he was just, he's giving me a jab, but he wasn't wrong. We had wrecked probably more than half of the super speedway races, not getting a lot of points. So that one, I bring it up because, I used it as motivation to okay, I can't be disappointing the boss like this. Like, we got to figure this super speedway stuff out. And so funny enough, I reminded him when we came back to Daytona the next year after we won the duel. I brought that story up. So I like mentioning that one because he does motivate us in a lot of ways, and he normally doesn't really give me a jab like that. But when it did, it was very effective. I turned it around in super speedways and won the duel that year. And then, a couple years later, we found a way to win the 500 and then at Echo Park Speedway. So we've certainly gotten a lot better on the super speedways. And I think Michael certainly motivated me to step it up.
Well, he says he's just the money behind this, but is that really true? Is that false modesty, or is he in the weeds with you guys? And he's obviously a big racing fan. So it strikes me as a little bit of false modesty to say, I'm just the money behind this enterprise.
Yeah, I think he just definitely deserves a lot more credit than just that. I think I understand what he means when he says that. He's certainly, everything that has happened, everyone's been talking about Michael throughout this. And I think I could be wrong, but how I look at that is, Denny Hamlin deserves a lot of credit too. Like what they started here together, the ownership group they put together to make 23XI what it is today. It takes a group effort. It really does. Yes, individuals can really stand out in certain moments and be difference makers. But I think what he's referring to there is just, Denny's played a massive role in 23XI being what it is today. I remember a couple of years ago when they were in the process of breaking ground for airspeed. Denny was walking me through everything. Like, he was so hands-on in the layout, the design of airspeed. I just remember he was just so excited about it. He was like, look at this, we got this, it's going to go here, it's going to feed into this. Like, he was just so excited about it, and he was so hands-on in the process of building airspeed. And so I think that's the importance in all of it is, I have owners like Denny and Michael that, Denny has the racing background and all of his knowledge he can pump into it. Michael has his background, all of his success and everything that he's accomplished. And just the two of them working together as owners, when you're able to sit in a room and have a meeting and be able to have those two individuals in front of you that you can seek advice through, Yeah, I know Michael said I'm the money, but he's a lot more than that, and he makes himself available to us too in many ways.
For those that don't know, 23XI sued NASCAR. You recently settled that lawsuit, allowing 23XI to be a chartered ownership company. I'm just curious, are there any lingering bad feelings around that? Does that even trickle down to you as a racer?
I definitely felt during this, start to finish this whole process, not even necessarily, while they were in court, but before that, I thought our side on 23XI and the NASCAR side did a really good job of just, keeping things separate. Like the people we're working at the racetrack that were with NASCAR, everyone's asked a question: are they being fair? Is there this going on, or is that happening? And I think everyone did a really good job of just, not letting things blend together. The things happening at the racetrack, I didn't feel like there was anything weird happening throughout the season as they were dealing with that. So obviously people ask the question and they have their concerns, but everything on that side seemed pretty good. In regards to, I guess, what you're talking about directly, I thought, it was a powerful statement that they made when they stood on the steps of court together and said, hey, we're going to move forward together and put this behind us. So I don't think there's been any negative lingering of any kind, really.
I want to ask you a couple questions about the business of NASCAR. First has to do with your winning. I mean, you win 3 races in a row like this. Does the team start to get approached by new potential sponsors? What does it do to the economics of the team beyond just, of course, the prize money you're winning for each of these races?
Yeah, I'd say very possible. In the past, I've been a part, whether it's been here at 23XI or other teams I've raced at. Certainly when you are on a streak like this, when you have success like this, it can open the door for, new partnership. Maybe there's someone that has interest. And when you have success like that on the racetrack, it's kind of the deal that sends it on through. It's kind of the finishing touch on the deal. So it just depends. I think one thing too, I love winning as a race car driver and that side of it, right? But the partners that are part of our organization, when we win major races or go on a streak like this, right? It's really big for the partner itself, the exposure they get from it. So yeah, there's a number of ways you can look at that, certainly. But I think the part that I really enjoy hearing about is how well we're able to boost the numbers with the partner that we may have on the car that weekend when we do win, certainly.
How do the economics all trickle down? Do you get a percentage of the sponsorship money? Is the prize money when you win, is that all yours, or is that divided percentage-wise between the team and you?
Yeah, that's where it gets very interesting, certainly. I think, each driver's contracts, it just depends on how that contract is structured. I think some drivers, it's kind of an open book, I would say. It's kind of whatever the driver thinks is important to them. Is the driver, want something stable, and are they more on a salary basis? Or, some drivers are certainly more about the winnings than a salary. It's that's where you get into negotiating with the teams on the contract basis. And it's kind of, like I said, open book. It's kind of, you negotiate back and forth and you figure out what that looks like. And if both parties are happy, you move on. So I think it's different for every driver. Everyone does it a little bit differently, but I think, yeah, it just kind of depends on how you want to approach it. I'd say, if you're a driver that's trying to prove yourself to the team, I'd say it's always arguably a little bit more aggressive to lean heavier on purse than just a salary, but it just depends. It really does.
You've been around the sport now for a little while. There was just a leadership change at the top. Steve Phelps no longer the commissioner of NASCAR. You're in I think a world now where F1 has obviously gained a lot of popularity. I'm just curious where you think NASCAR is in sort of the lifespan of the sport. Do you feel like it's just on the precipice of a new wave of growth? Are there certain things you're concerned about?
Yeah, it's I think it's in a really good place, honestly. Yeah, it's not at the peak that it was years and years ago. But I do feel like it's going in the right direction. We went to this Gen 7 car, next gen car as it's been called, over the years. It was a really big deal for this car to be successful. I think in a lot of ways it has been. There's things that need to continue to change and improve, but I think NASCAR is doing a really good job of just listening to everyone involved. Listening to the drivers to an extent is good. Sometimes we can lead them down the wrong path, but listening to the teams, Goodyear Tire Company is also, doing great work right now and making these tires softer, changing it up to help, make the cars more challenging to drive on the track. And when they are, the racing gets more intense. The drivers are having to work harder. I'd say for us, the tire really makes a huge difference right now on what kind of racing we put on the racetrack. So I think we're in this spot. Certainly it feels like, we're in a good spot, and it does feel like we're going in the right direction. Is it on the brink of like exploding again, like it did all those years ago? I truly don't know, but I think we're going in the right way.
Well, I'm sure NASCAR's pleased with your winning streak. I mean, that's one way to bring popularity to racing, is if you're doing something that's never been done before. I say that with, I'm sure there's hope by everyone, at least at the league level, that this streak continues. But I want to ask you one more question before we let you go. If you turn on CNBC at any given moment, we're almost always talking about AI these days. I'm just curious, are you using AI in either your race preparation or even during the race itself?
For me in the car, I don't have access really to any of that. I think, it is something that the teams are exploring, just trying to find ways that we can make, use of the data that we have. I think right now it's not something we really rely on a lot, but I think we're just trying to learn and find ways how, can we utilize this? Can we go down this path and find a use for it? Certainly. More times than not, I don't even know. I think it's just because it's been updated, put in my phone where I'll ask Siri something and it'll ask me if I want to go to the web or use a form of AI to answer the question for me. So I definitely think it's something that they're playing around with to see if we can find use. And I certainly think, once we find what that thing is, it'll be used on a more consistent basis. But it's certainly, the amount of, in our world, there's a lot in the NASCAR world now that we race and live in, with all the data that we're able to see off of these race cars, the drivers are able to see of each other, when we're sitting there debriefing with our team. There's just so much data to go through that it is a bit overwhelming. So trying to nail something down in that direction to, make it more efficient. We're able to get to the most important part of that data faster is important. So I think on some level down the road, it wouldn't shock me if it's, more in play on a weekly basis.
Tyler, good luck in Phoenix. And I'm sure you don't want to let Michael down, right? Is he intimidating? Is he a softie?
He knows when to turn the heat on and apply the pressure. And he's certainly, he's just, I've been fortunate to be around him a lot, and just the way he's able to motivate everybody here at Airspeed, it's really cool to see. Honestly, he motivates me a lot too. But when Michael's just such a great natural leader, and he does a really good job of being one of the leaders of this team. So it's just a real privilege to be able to drive for someone like him.
Good luck in Phoenix.
Thank you.